what's the first thing I do with my actual cylinder? Visual measure, right? Yeah. So I'll measure this versus this, right? I don't care anything about this stuff down here. I go over to my drawing. What's the first thing I do here?
Do that measurement from the top of the page.
Yeah, I'm not drawing the ellipse, so what do I have to draw?
A vertical line.
Not yet. Horizontal line. Front edge of what? Huh?
The front edge of the cylinder.
No, no.
Paper.
The imaginary paper, right, that's setting on top of the cylinder, the plane, right? We're going to pop this ellipse into a plane, right? Imaginary piece of paper sitting on top. So what's the first thing I draw over here?
Horizontal line.
Huh?
Horizontal line.
Horizontal line, the front edge of that piece of paper, right? That doesn't exist, but we're going to create a structure that we can fit our ellipse into. And I know it's going to be at the top, right? So if I make it this small, I'm going to have a tiny little cylinder, right? If I make that front edge fill up the whole sheet, I might not have enough room, so you got to create a sense of scale, right? So I'm going to put a line down that maybe it's about that big, okay? All right, I go to my cylinder and I take a measurement. There's my front to back. Remember, do not tip your pencil. Had people doing that yesterday and they got all weird relationship. Keep that pencil straight up and down relative to your body, right? Because that reflects the flatness of the page. So when you're doing your visual measurements, never tip it away from you. So I take that and I walk it across here. 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's 3. What do I do next over here?
You're up with your...
Take a guess at the back, right? Or I could divide it in thirds, just so happens it's third this time. Let me take a guess. There's my guess. 1, 2. What do I need to do with that mark? Bring it down. Yep, yep. So that's good. You're getting the hang of this. 1, 2, 3. That's pretty good. Now I put a line there. Now I know that I can't change that, right? Because that's what I'm measuring against, right? So now all I do is just kind of, and that's all the angle you need. Not much, okay? Cool. So we've drawn the plane that's sitting on top of there, right? Let's go back to the cylinder again, okay? Now we got to draw a plane, imaginary plane that's sitting under the cylinder in order to draw the bottom circle. Okay. So a line that's the same size. This is not a tapered form. So I'm going to draw a line that's the same size, same length as the top one, right? Just down here. I got to drop a couple plumb lines down so I get in the right place, right? All I'm doing is drawing the front edge of an imaginary plane that's underneath that thing. Problem is, how far down on the paper do I go to draw that?
You need to do a visual measurement.
What am I doing a visual measurement of here to figure out where this edge is down?
The relationship between
The height versus what? What would be the simplest thing? Width. It's always height, width, yeah. So I have the width established, right? Generally here, so I can use that as a benchmark now. So I go over here and I'll measure width of the whole thing. This is my real object, right? Turn it vertically. I say this all the time, but people get confused with it. Front edge, it's always easier. Front edge, boom, to front edge, because that's the first line I'm making, right? Front edge, so I want to put a front edge of a plane down here, right? So my relationship, when I do my visual measurement here, is how many times does the width of the whole thing fit from the front edge to the front edge, okay? Because I'll constantly see people getting the cylinders too long and narrow or too spot. So we'll measure that. Kind of guess to make here. Turn it. I get 1. And what? About half again, right? Go to my drawing. Remember, when you go over here, you're literally laying your pencil or your ruler down on the paper, right? Here you're doing this. Over here you're doing this, right? Everybody understands that, right? You've done that before. So I'll grab my pencil and I'll do this. And what do I do with that measurement right there? Turn it sideways and go 1, right? And a half. So now I know I'm going to have the whole thing in the right proportion. Now I simply put a line down. It's the same length as the top because it's symmetrical form. You know, I can kind of drop a couple. We'll put solid lines here in a second, but just a couple plumb lines that allow me to put that right underneath it. Okay. Then I can take those away. Now I know that this bottom plane is going to be right underneath the top plane. Now I got to construct that bottom plane. Okay. So I got the cylinder sitting in front of me. Problem is, I can't see the back of that cylinder because it's an opaque form. It's a solid form. I can't see through it. And even if it was glass, it might distort a little bit. Yeah. Well, that's a very good point. Let's find that out if we do that, okay? Grant is suggesting it's the same size circle, right? And that makes perfect sense to me. But there may be a fly in it.
The computer can do it. It's tough to do it manually.
What's that?
You can do it in a computer, but
Yeah.
it's tough to do it manually.
I know.
You copy paste.
Yeah,
it, but
yeah. Well, no, but what Grant's saying, you just take that measurement and apply it down here.
Yeah,
It's the same
that's
circle,
what I'm
right?
saying. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or
But if you're looking down partially
yeah.
at that cylinder, the sides as your eye sees them, not as your brain sees them,
Okay.
are not parallel.
You mean they're not the same?
Right.
Yeah. Will this circle be bigger or smaller than this circle? Huh? I mean wider. You know, will the front to back be a larger or a smaller form than the top? What happens when this gets to eye level?
Flattens out.
Totally disappears, right?
Yeah.
Yet I still see a little curve here, right? So extrapolate from that and tell me, will this arc here be more of an arc, i.e. this ellipse a little wider this way than this way, or will it be smaller?
I think
But
it'll
you're
be
not going
wider.
to see it.
I'm not seeing it, but well, I'll show you how we'll see it in a second.
Geometry, it'll be the same, but depending on your perspective, it'll change.
I think the bottom will here will line.
And it is, depending on your perspective, you're right, Adam. And Ted, you're right, it's wider. Your perspective is different because it's lower. This
Right.
is lower, right? So you're seeing more of it. It's as though you take this vessel and you go like that. And when I had you do that, you could see that you got to start seeing more of this thing, right? Yeah. So when you draw this thing, it better be bigger than this one, taller, right? Okay. So start at the front edge, and now we got to find the back edge. Problem is, I can't see the back, so I can't measure it. There's a couple ways around that, but here's what I want you to do. I want you a nice white clean sheet of paper, 3 pieces of tape, 2 here, 1 here, just a backdrop before you can start. Okay. Put your cylinder on there. And what? 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 I didn't hear you say what?
You can see its shadow.
Oh, you could. No, it's a little simpler than that. Okay. You could. That's right. Yeah.
To the shadow of the camera.
Take a pencil and do what around the bottom of this thing?
Trace it.
Trace it, yeah. So once you trace it, then you get to that point, right? Move this off. And you have a circle left over. The footprint of that. So what would I do? So let's say I move this away. And I am now revealing the footprint of it. This freaks everybody out because they see that as a full circle. They say, well, that's a real circle now. All of a sudden, no, it's not. It's just the footprint. You still see it in perspective. You're still seeing that traced circle on the piece of paper in perspective from a certain angle, right? Just because it's now looks like a circle and not the bottom of a cylinder doesn't mean that you're not looking at it at a point from a point of perspective. Okay. So what do I do with that traced circle on the blank sheet of paper? Visual measurement. So I'm going to measure front to back. The width is the same, right, as the thing above. And I walk it. This time I get 2. So I go over to my drawing. Take a guess. What's the matter, Barbara?
I'm not understanding how you get one way and 2 when it's a circle.
That's right. Yeah, that is freaky, isn't it? Okay, so look at the opening here, right?
Right.
See that? You only see a limited amount front to back versus left to right, right?
Right.
The lower that circle gets, the more of it you see.
Right.
So if a circle that's lower in space relative to your eye level,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to see more of than a circle that's higher in space relative to your eye level.
Right.
So the one on the bottom, you're seeing more of than the one on the top, right?
On a cylinder?
Yeah, this circle down here at the bottom of that cylinder is lower down relative to my eye level than the one up here.
So you're saying you see more, but really all you're doing is you're seeing half of it.
Now, but when I trace around this, move it away, I see the footprint of it, right?
Yes.
Have I raised that up in the air? still in the same spot relative to my eye level, right?
Right.
So whatever I see here, I can measure front to back against the width of it, right? And understand that I'm seeing more of that circle now, front to back, not left to right, front to back, than I did of the one above it. Okay, that's why you're seeing, that's why this measurement is going to be different than this one. Because it's lower down. The only thing is, when this is in the way, you don't see it, right? You don't see that front to back. If you're attentive, you'll notice that's more of a curve than the one up here, okay? But I'm giving you a way to actually visually measure the back of this thing, okay, by tracing around it. So we go over here, take a guess. And I got to make that fit across here 2 times, right? Hardly angle that. Now I've drawn 2 planes, one hovering over another one, right? Right? Everybody see that? Those 2 slices of the cylinder, right? Put my X in. This is where it meets. So we got my dot, my dot, my dot, my dot. And then you can just simply, you could start to carve these things with actually without even looking at the cylinder anymore. And then once I get a sense of perfection on these, by erasing and adding and erasing and adding, how do I finish that diagrammatic cylinder? Vertical lines from these 2 points right here, right? And they should be pretty close to right above one another, okay? Not the corner of the plane, but from these 2 points. So I simply drop a vertical down to this point, drop a vertical down to this point, and voila, you've drawn a diagrammatic version of your observation of this cylinder in perspective, a linear perspective version of this cylinder. Okay? On this side, now don't worry about the thickness of the cylinder and all that sort of stuff, because it has a lip on it and all that sort of stuff, okay? On this side, I want you to kind of just sketch one out freehand. Now you know all the basic measurements, so you can apply them to that one, right? You've gone through that already. You know that this needs to be 3:1 or whatever yours it happens to be, right? You know that these are going to kind of come straight down. You know that this is going to be a bigger arc. Which arc, by the way, will be bigger? If I put you can't see the back of it there, can you? I don't want you to draw the back. You can't see it in this version. It's just a drawing of that cylinder without it being a diagrammatic drawing, but you still want to kind of imagine that arc, right?
The front bottom should be the biggest.
Yeah, so all you need to do is kind of lay your ruler down, put a line across there, right? Lay your ruler down here, make sure those are right across from each other. That should be smaller, right, than that, right? So that's a way of figuring out, it's a half of an ellipse, right? But you can do some visual measurement and understanding with the concept now and know that this is a kind of puffier circle, right? A more full circle or arc than this one. So you literally can measure those 2, right? And at the same time, you're aware that the height of the whole thing needs to be whatever it is in your scenario, right? This needs to fit my scenario is 1.5 times, etc., etc. So do it sketchily. Do it in kind of freehand, sketchy kind of. But what happens is you've already kind of slowed yourself down enough to understand all the various nuances of the measurements that's going on there. So when you get over to the real version, meaning the way you'd normally draw one, if you're making a painting or something, right, of a still life of glasses or whatever, then you have all this embedded in your head, all this structural stuff. I see that endlessly, by the way, in the painting class and other classes. People want to jump in and make beautiful paintings, but what they're not seeing is the sense of perspective, the sense of structure that needs to be underneath that painting, right? It needs to exist within that painting. That's why we have drawing class, is to learn all that stuff. So next time you draw this, like this cup or something, you're able to do it. By the way, a tapered form is different. So these kind of edges will come in a little bit further, and that circle down there will be smaller this way, right? So that affects the arc too, right? So all that stuff kind of plays a role. That's really hard to even draw that top of that lid, right? There's like concentric circles there, right? So, that gets really complicated, all that stuff. This is a pretty simple form, and you're going to find that it's very difficult. Okay, just to review. First thing you do, what? Huh?
Put your back right.
Put your background up. Next move.
Hold a piece of, put your feet.
Place the cylinder. Next move.
Hold a big piece of paper in hand.
Yep. Next move.
Start your diagram.
Well, before you do anything, what do you need to do with this?
Oh,
thing?
trace that.
Trace that, yeah, so you don't lose that, okay. The next move is to measure the front-back relationship, right? Draw a straight line here, apply that front-back, do that plane. Figure out how far down you want, that's going to be the same width, drop plumb lines. Take the cylinder away, measure the bottom circle, apply that to the bottom. And then carve your arcs in, connect your lines, and you've got your perspective cylinder. And then next move is to go draw the freehand. Okay? How can this thing be so complicated? Ken? Any questions?
No, but how do you remember all the steps?
Well, like always, you don't learn in drawing or art until you do it, anyways, right? You know, so you're kind of kind of know what I'm talking about, but you really won't know till the end of class because you've had no experience. Okay, so take a little break. You listen.